Welcome back to the porch, Painted Porch Strategies. Got Sierra, got Amy, got Rob. How you doing? So we're in the middle of our book. Not quite the middle, but this is a handbook for new Stoics. Each week we learn a new lesson. And here we are in week 18, stepping up, going into the next phase. Part 2, if you want to call it that, phase 2, where we put our practice that we've been doing for the last 17 weeks into action. So I want to rewind the clock a little bit, ladies, because back, I think it was week 6, we introduced the Premeditatio Malorum concept of Stoicism.
Amy's favorite term.
Which is what?
It is premeditating on future events.
If they go awry.
If they go awry. I like to think of it as like the old school worst case scenario. Remember?
Yes.
Yeah, the worst case scenario. But
Murphy's Law, if you will.
Murphy's Law. And it's not planning for the expectation that it will happen. It's just planning for if it does happen. Contingency plans, if you will.
So what's an example of where you would use Premeditatio Malorum?
I would say something as simple as taking a trip to the grocery store. So that might be something that you could very simply do a premeditatio on, understanding that it may take you longer than you planned. You may, which happens often, I think, on our street to go to the grocery store. There's always some sort of traffic backup of some sort, or construction that might be happening, or an accident that may have occurred, whatever it might be. Just being prepared for that, and understanding how you're going to handle it, what handle you're going to pick up when and if that does incur.
Well, that's where this comes in, because this part, week 18, is about taking action on that. So set an intention to accept things that go wrong. So it's not just anticipation now, it is accepting it. So now you go, all right, I'm driving to the store, there may be some road work. It may take me twice as long to get there. That's premeditatio malorum. Now you add to the fact that now you're in the traffic. Now you have to accept the fact that you're in the traffic. And there's nothing you can necessarily do about it because you're already there in the traffic. So again, going back to our dichotomy of control, you anticipate and accept the things that happen. So that was our exercise that we had to do this week. But the example they use is a woman who goes to the gym. Amira. So the example they say is she goes into the gym and she wants to do some squats. And there's a dude in there, a gym bro, doing bicep curls in the squat machine. So she has to accept that that is happening. And then it doesn't mean being a pushover. It means going up and saying, hey, would you mind doing your bicep curls somewhere else so I can do some squats?
But not a, hey,
yeah.
Would you mind doing this here? Because I have to do this and I'm important, so I need to do my thing, scram.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like this quote. And then I want to ask you guys what you did, what you went. So this is a translation from Robert Dobbin from Epictetus. So Robert Dobbin it kind of translates it this way. I cannot keep harmony with nature if I go to pieces every time someone splashes water on me.
I loved that. That was a great quote.
What did it mean to you, Sierra, that quote? Did that stand out to you as well?
Oh, I mean, this is something that's daily. I mean, this is kind of like mindfulness encapsulated, right? I can't, what's more worth it to you, to lose your mind over some water on you, or to say like, it's a little water and it'll dry?
Exactly. If you get cut in a rainstorm, like, okay, you can't control the weather, it's raining, now what?
Yep. But I think to take it even a step further, it's going back to what you said just a moment ago. It's acceptance, but not necessarily acquiescence, right? So you can accept it, but that doesn't mean that you allow how do I want to put it? You can accept it, but you don't have to necessarily stay silent about it. But it's, if you are going to verbalize to someone, say someone did splash water on you, instead of losing your cool, getting in a state of heightened emotion, possibly yelling at them, which then triggers them to yell back at you, and then it's just one big yell fest. Instead, being able to say, okay, it's just water, I'm just gonna wipe it off. But being able to have the conversation to say, hey, you know what, I don't know if you may not have been aware, and find a way to do it in a
I always
and
imagine
even
talking
key
to a kid.
away.
So, like, for
Yeah.
example, if I'm playing with Sierra's son and maybe he hits me a little too hard and I'm like, okay, what did you do there? That was a little too hard. That's how I like to handle those situations where I don't want to yell
Right.
because, again, it's a
They
learning
may not
lesson.
have known
Yeah,
either.
exactly. So I not that I treat everybody like a 5-year-old, but the idea is to try to stay even keel because I feel like that message will be received a lot better. Or if you're in the gym and someone's using the equipment for not that purpose and you want to use it for the actual purpose, like the squat bench or whatever, you just ask, hey, boom. Usually it works out well. Usually.
Right. But also understand that there may be times where you can ask nicely and someone's still going to be a jerk back and you're like, okay, well, you know what? Nice talking to you.
Yeah. Well, and this chapter specifically says Amira can take the same action as she otherwise would have, but without being upset in the process.
Correct.
So it's more like, is it really worth it to you to get worked up? Or can you say, hey, would you mind? But then if it, just like take it down a notch, right? Keep your cool.
Well, and they even talk here, and I wrote this in the margin. It's talking about with the premeditatio, looking ahead, what might frustrate you in your life during the day, whatever it might be, a particular situation. And they literally talk about practicing responding in a different way. So actually practicing a different response. So that way, when the moment does occur, because naturally your body is going to kick up. There's going to be something that's going to kick up in you. But if you practice how you can respond more calmly, then you're more prepared for it and you're not accidentally flying off the handle or giving them a little sass.
Right.
So that's the big thing, is practicing your response to it in a way that is calm and rational.
Well, and I
do
love
it for picking. Sorry, please.
One of the steps they give you in the exercise, and I'm sure Rob will encapsulate it in a moment, but I particularly love the step 3, which is imagine yourself behaving calmly in the situation. So you're literally rehearsing in your head, you're looking at the movie, picturing and feeling yourself. You can still respond, but in a calm way. It's that premeditatio malorum plus choosing calm.
Yep.
And I wish I could think of a better fictional example. I'm going to use a generic one, but if you use the movie as an example and you have like a crazy situation happen and the character just kind of goes, huh. Like, for example, Ocean's 12, not the best of the Ocean's movies, but there's a scene where Brad Pitt's car blows up because Terry Benedict from Ocean's 11 is sending him a message. And his car blows up and he just goes, huh. Like, he handles it calmly. Like, all right, my car just blew up. Instead of going, oh my goodness. And you have a relationship with him because he handles it calmly. You respect him. He goes, well, that just happened. Now what do I do? And, I forget what he goes on to do from there. But it was that moment of that scene that stood out because you don't see that often. Oftentimes in modern culture, the reward is to fly off the handle. We live in an over-opinionated culture at the moment. So, for example,
it's Real Housewives
It is.
everywhere.
It really is. I mean, that's a great analogy. So, Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, if you ask me. First week of the season, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he's on a brand new team. He didn't play that well. I think he threw an interception or 2. And everybody's like, oh, see, Tom Brady's 43 years old. And it's like, okay, except now he, at this point when we're recording this, has the second most touchdown passes in the league. Tampa Bay's 5-2. They're just fine. But we don't have to, but we do overreact. So if you're the calm one who says, Tampa Bay's going to be just fine. Oh, and I can't really control that situation. If you're that person, you will stand out. You handle it calmly. So I'm curious, what did you guys write down? Because they have us go through examples of going through these steps. As Sarah mentioned, step 3, imagine yourself behaving calmly in the situation. Let me just backtrack real quick. Give you step 1. Visualize a task. This is what we're doing. You're likely to encounter today or this week that you would find frustrating. Step 2 is rehearse. I want to do this activity, but also want to keep my cool by accepting what happens. So, Sierra, what did you write down? What were examples that came to you?
Well, I have kind of, I'll use it, I'll look at the silver lining. I have an additional help in this, in that I am almost always with our son, and our son is always listening and always watching. So I have an additional motivator to keep my cool because I know he's watching, right? And that's kind of what I want to teach him. That's the culture, like we were talking about earlier, that's the culture that I want to, and the only real way I can do that is by modeling that type of culture. So it's kind of, I look at as part of my job to model that calm, cool, rational, stoic standpoint. So one that came out for this week, we were on a road trip, is hitting lights and hitting traffic on our drive. Yes, we want to get home. Yes, we want to get there, whatever it is. But are you in control of an accident on the freeway? No, you're not. Are you in control of hitting every red light? No, you are not. Are you in control of the place you travel to, it being bike week and there be a crap ton of bikers? You knew this was the case, right? It was premeditated. So you can kind of understand that driving is going to be slower than perhaps you would like, but does you screaming in the car, being pissed off that it's taking longer, does that change anything? No. If you can take your cool and just breathe and say, okay, this is going to take a little longer. Hey, let's look around for license plates. Hey, let's see what's over there. How is that different from where we live? That was me, and that really happened. So the premeditatio about it actually was great practice
for the eventual action. That's great. Yeah, I had traffic as one of mine too, because it was actually something that I had encountered, and I was looking back on it. I was like, man, I was actually pretty calm about it. It was a very long time. I was maybe a quarter of a mile from the house, and it was like 20 minutes of sitting in this traffic, and there were people behind me that were honking. There was one that was honking at me, and I was just like, I don't know where to go. It's whatever, I was actually just kind of content, just sitting in the car, listening to music. And I was like, you know what, I'm not going to let this bother me. It is what it is. I kind of anticipated it a little bit because before I was on my way home, I was on my way to, and I saw what was potentially happening. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I got to prepare for it. It's probably still going to be there by the time I get back. So I just had a different mindset when I approached the traffic. And I mean, thankfully for me, I didn't have anywhere I needed to be by a certain time. So that certainly helped with me not getting worked up about it. But even still, I was just like, whatever, it's fine, no big deal. But the other one that I did talk about that I wrote in here was going to the store and more so going to the store and trying to find something and not finding it or unable to locate it, and then having trouble finding someone to help you find it. Right. So that's something that happens, especially as you know, when you're doing home improvements in your house. As many people as there are in some of these home improvement stores, sometimes it's like trying to find somebody is like, a pearl of sand in the desert. So through that, I said, you know what, how can I approach this? And I said, well, the one nice thing is that at least when it comes to Home Depot or Lowe's, a lot of times you can do a search online for the item that you're looking for, and it will literally tell you like what aisle it's located in the store, which was awesome when I discovered that. I was like, oh, this is great. I don't have to go meandering 50 aisles to try to find something. I can just pinpoint it there. I also said, I can set a time limit for myself to then just stop searching for someone and just march up to customer service and be like, I need help finding this, because there's always somebody there regardless, as opposed to doing the chase around of people. Excuse me. So that was another small one, but it's something that can get very frustrating very quickly, which can then cause you to react in an exasperated manner when you do find someone who ironically you're asking for help from, and yet you're kind of a jerk to them when you ask them for help. So that was an example for me. How about you, Rob?
I went political. Well, I mean, I had a couple of them too.
Of course. It's his world.
Well, but it is. I mean, it's a different world we lived in than it did 7-8 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I use gyms are still requiring masks in Arizona. So how I anticipate this is going to the gym requires you to wear a mask. So the intention is accept it if you go to the gym, or do something about it, work out in a different capacity and be okay with that. So I actually canceled the gym membership because they were requiring masks. And this is an hour-long workout, and I'm like, I'm not going to be, personally speaking, comfortable wearing a mask for a 60-minute workout. It's not going to work. So I waited it out, and they decided that they were going to continue that based on what the state was requiring of them. I can't control that. So I knew that that was the case. Premeditatio Malorum of, okay, if I go to the gym and work out, it's going to be uncomfortable. I accept the fact that the state is requiring gyms to make people wear masks. Okay, now great, perfect. So instead of getting frustrated, ticked off, anything of that nature, I have just accepted that, whether I like it or not, because it really doesn't matter whether I like it or not, because I'm not in charge. So I've just come up with alternative strategies. Go out for a run, work out at home, and enjoy that instead of being in the gym. Maybe the workouts aren't the same, but I'm still moving my body.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
in the world of COVID, there's a lot of accepting that we have to do, and a lot of people are fighting against it. And this is like the perfect example of this exercise. Living in this world right now is a perfect application to accept the things that it cannot control, and set an intention to accept the things that you cannot control. Flying is different. Going out to eat is different. Going to the gym is different. Anything, just about everything is different.
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think to that point, because I think that there are some people that can say, well, I don't agree with this, so I want to be vocal about it. I want to challenge the notion of this. And we're not saying you can't do that or you shouldn't do that. It's just do it in a calm way. And that's the linchpin right there. It's, so many people nowadays are going into a gym or going into a store and then not wearing a mask, and then having someone come up to them and say, hey, you need to wear it. And they're like, F you, I don't have to do this, this is my right, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, you know what? You can challenge the notion. You may not agree with what they're doing, but accept that that is their rule, and yet still be able to have a civil discourse, a discussion, be able to talk about it in a rational, calm way. Shouting at someone and telling them that your rights are being violated or that you don't agree
Especially
with
if it's
X
a
or Y.
17-year-old hostess at a restaurant.
Right. And I would say the same is true in the reverse. If there is not mask required and someone is walking around and not wearing a mask, don't come up to them and yell at them to wear a mask. If it's just accept the boundaries, accept what's been set, but be willing to have the challenge or challenge the idea or have a conversation, not a confrontation.
Or just don't have one.
Yeah.
I mean,
but if you're that compelled.
Well, no, but you don't have, the other part of accepting is if you don't feel comfortable engaging in someone because it's going to be a fight, don't do it. Walk away. Just let it be.
Yeah.
Like that, you don't have to converse with someone because they're wearing a mask or not. You can be like, hey, that person's not doing what I would do. Okay.
Right.
Sometimes you don't know how they will react. And sometimes it's accepting the fact that you're not going to change their mind because of your brilliance, because it's not going to happen, right? People are going to make a decision.
The irony too is like, you're wearing a mask. There's somebody that you see far away that's not wearing a mask. So you're upset. You're going to go closer to them with the droplets potentially getting closer to you. Like, just walk farther away. I don't know. I mean, does anybody not see that? Like, that's kind of why.
I like this. I think this kind of rounds it out to this idea, this discussion well, where it says, there are countless occasions on which this exercise is useful because we can pretty much rely on some people or other to behave improperly in pretty much every situation. So again, it's the idea of let's not have that person be us, but let's also prepare for when someone might splash water on us, right? How are we going to react if we get water splashed on us? Are we going to throw our head back in rage, or are we going to wipe the water away and calmly move forward?
I'll give you an actual real world example. That you said just made me think of something. So when we lived in New Orleans, I went out one night. This bar called Miss May's. And Miss May's was famous for, at least at the time in 04 or 05, had these little sort of plastic cups, are about this big, but it was $1 for a drink. So you could get a whiskey and Coke for $1 in that little cup.
New Orleans.
It is. It's just New Orleans. And
Yeah.
I was out with some people that I worked with, and we were sitting at a table. And my friend Matt was sitting on one end of the table, and there was a guy standing next to him in his group, and they bumped into Matt one time, and Matt was like, "Excuse me," bumped into him again. He was like, "Can you not bump into me?" And every time the tension was elevated. Third time, Matt stands up, they're face to face. I'm like, okay, here's the water splashing on the face. So I got up and I said, hey. So I said, Matt, why don't you go over here and let me talk to them. So I said, look, we're all here trying to have a good time, right? That's the intent of us being in this bar with dollar drinks. I said, let's not ruin the good time. And I forget exactly how I phrased it, but I said, let's separate and figure out how to knock this tension down. So like I was a stoic in that moment.
Look at you.
But I didn't want to, I didn't want to I don't want to deal with the fight and this guy getting punched in the face. And I'm like, why don't we just cut this off now and separate ourselves? And then you go talk to Matt, you let him blow off his steam, right? So I talked to them, it was cool, worked it out. And then I went to talk to Matt, let him blow off his steam. I said, okay, we feeling better now, kind of thing. Like that. That's how you can step in and be the one in this COVID world where the water's splashing all over the place. Sometimes it's like a tidal wave. Be the calm one.
Yeah, you don't need to flip tables every time you don't get your way.
Exactly.
Again, like the Real Housewives.
Real Housewives.
So I love it. Very good. That was excellent. So let's go to our quiz. So at the beginning of each section, we have a quiz. And at the end of each section, we redo the quiz to see what we've learned and how we've progressed. So this is a 3-question quiz based on a 1 to 10 scale, where 1 doesn't describe me at all, 10 describes me perfectly. So here's the number 1. I tend to act impulsively on the basis of my initial urges without questioning them.
I said I was a 3.
As in doesn't describe
As
you
in
very
it
well.
doesn't, it describes me less. I don't believe I act impulsively based on my initial urges without questioning them. Would you disagree?
It depends. I mean, look, we all have those urges.
What was your number?
I'm always like,
Rob,
pause.
what was your number? What did
I went
you
right in
say?
the middle at a 5.
Yeah, I would say you were.
Wow.
We both think we're higher.
Yeah. But I'm getting better. That's why.
Yes.
I mean, as in learning about Stoicism over the last really 6 months or so, I'm less apt to.
Well, I think the quiz is based on just the day you take the quiz
Yeah, that's
Right?
true. That's true.
in
I
the
must
present.
be very calm that day.
I said 2. Hopefully that's not too low, but I was like, I don't think.
Sounds about right.
We agree with you.
Mhm.
We agree with that. We don't agree
Okay.
with each other, but we agree with you.
Hold on. Not yet.
Not yet. But it's about how you feel. Like I just was looking at the scale and my gut said 5, so I went with 5.
You're like half the
Okay.
time you do, half the
Yeah,
time
basically.
you don't. All right, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fair.
I was like, I think I'm like 60-40 maybe, somewhere around there, as opposed to, or maybe even like, 30-70, where I have those moments where I'm like, ah, and then the rest of the time I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna take a breath and then I'll react.
But is there such thing as too calm, which we can get into later?
No.
Question number 2.
Well, and
Yeah.
for the females, I think it also depends what number you answer based on where you are in your monthly cycle. So
That's a great point.
if I took the quiz on a different day, probably would be a higher number. Just saying.
Or how much your men asked of you that day.
Like that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I shy away from my responsibilities in life. Sierra, what'd you write for this one? 1 to 10 scale. 10 being describes you perfectly. 2.
I was a 2 again.
I could see that.
I think that I feel like most of the things I do have to do with responsibilities in life and less with fun. So I said 2.
Amy?
I said 4. I felt not quite half and half, but again, I have moments where I'm just like, I don't want to.
And I again went right in the middle because I agree. I do a pretty good list of daily tasks every day, but there's certain other things that I need to do. And sometimes I let those daily tasks, work tasks, get in the way of, like, say, home tasks, like cooking dinner or something like that. So I'll just assume that Amy will do it, and sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. But I shouldn't rely on her. So that's why I put a 5. So the third one, I can be selfish and don't care much about other people's well-being. So 10 describes you perfectly. 1 describes you, doesn't describe you at all. Amy?
I was actually, I said 5, like 5.5. I actually circled in between 5 and 6. I feel like I can definitely behave that way.
Explain.
It's not that I don't care. I definitely care about other people's well-being. I think it was more, I'm not taking the action of showing that I care. I think it was more where I was at, like checking in with people, calling people up to, say, how are you doing? It's when it's in the situation where a person is there, or, a social engagement, or if they call me, I mean, I'm full in, I'm all engaged in them, but I'm not intentionally taking the time to go out of my way, I guess is the way I would say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Sierra, what about you?
So,
Even.
twos all across the board.
I was 2 straight down. I don't know. I think that it depends on how when Amy, you say you were 5 and 6, I would say that's not how I perceive you at all, but I think you interpreted the question differently than I did.
Yeah. It's because it's more like being more selfless with how I'm spending my time. That was really the way I looked at it more. So making space for other people's, for reaching out and engaging and checking in with other people and their well-being. That was
The question doesn't ask about you initiating. The question says, don't care much about other people's well-being. I don't necessarily think that's true.
Yeah.
I would not rate your number that high.
Well, thank you. I got one where I'm lower than I.
Nah.
Well, no, because I looked at it as, I do feel that it can be a knock on myself that I'm not taking that effort. I'm not intentionally reaching out. So I view that in my mind as not caring as much as I should.
I guess as someone who's been your friend a long time, I would just say that's just not your style.
Yeah.
You're not a coddler, right?
Definitely not.
No.
That's just not your love language, if you will. That's not how you operate. You're not like, hey, are you okay? Hey, you okay now? Hey, what you doing? Are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's more like, I know that I could call Amy at any random moment and be like, I need to talk to somebody. I'm about to go crazy. I need to talk me down off a ledge.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what she was doing, she would drop everything to talk me down off the ledge. But she's not going to be the person that sends me a text every 5 minutes. Hi, what you do now? How would you do now? She's not her style.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Robbio, what about you?
I went 3. I feel like I'm pretty good at that, but I feel like I'm trying to find a balance where the COVID time has taught me to really focus on myself and my own well-being, because I've put focused too much, I think, on other people's and ignored mine. Not that the focus on others isn't bad, because I think that's a good thing to do, but you have to take care of yourself too. So I think I'm now kind of gravitating towards the other side. So I got to find that nice balance, which I think I'm working on.
Yeah.
I'm very giving. No. Okay. Now here's a final question I have for you, because as a 2 and as a mom and as a wife, I think that for women it's much different than it is for men, because I think women typically give more than they get in terms of this, because your mom's primarily, and this is somewhat ancestral, it's somewhat societal, it's somewhat cultural. Women are primary caretakers of children,
Right.
regardless of how modernized men are, and are the center of the household. So that is a challenge for women to do
Yeah.
that.
I would agree that's and you said it right about your own journey is the balance, right? Is it's hard to find that right balance because I am that type of mom. Like I would literally give all the food on my plate to my child and just starve.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and there's, I know logically you have to find the right balance of that. And I'm not always good at that. So there's the balance as well.
Mm-hmm. That's why we did this exercise, to kind of assess where we're at and to keep our peace of mind in mind as we go about our daily activities, weekly activities, monthly activities. So that is our lesson, week 18. Hope you're following along with us here on the porch, Painted Porch Strategy. Sierra, Amy, Rob. Next week, this is going to be a good one. Cut out the busyness. I'm looking forward to this one because I am very busy. We all are very busy.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I think this one's going to be pretty juicy, you guys.
Yeah.
Get
I
ready.
think it's going to be eye-opening.
I think so as well. So next week, join us right here on YouTube. PaintedPorchStrategies.com is the website. Say hi to us. Follow along with us. What are the lessons you are learning as you become a modern Stoic as we head closer and closer to 20?